A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Astotara Shata Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Sachinandana Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jaya Shri Rupa Stanata Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Kapala Bhatta Das Raghunath Sal Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Dev Ki Jai. Tulsi Dev Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Gurnath Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. ISKCON Bharata Guru Vrinda Ki Jai. Samavekta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande. Haribo. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru Sri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayana Namaskritya Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayam Naridayat Nastapreshu Vatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasati, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by the rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. All right, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. I thought it would be not so many people here today, but alas, nice, very nice. All right, so today is July 27th, 2025, and we are reading Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order. We're reading chapter 29, Talks between Narada and King Prachini. And we are reading verse 41. Okay. Eterupadrito nityam Jiva loka svabhavajai Nakaroti haranunam Katamrita nidaratim Eterupadrito nityam Jiva loka svabhavajai Nakaroti haranunam Katamrita nidaratim Eterupadrito nityam Jiva loka svabhavaji Nakaroti haranunam Katamrita nidaratim. Okay, please chant.
Eterupadrito nityam
Eterupadrito nityam
Jivaloka svabhavajai
Jivaloka svabhavajai
Nakaroti haranunam
Nakaroti haranunam
Katamrita nidaratim
Katamrita nidaratim Eterupadrito nityam Jivaloka svabhavajai Nakaroti haranunam Katamrita nidaratim Eterupadrito nityam Jivaloka svabhavajai Nakaroti haranunam Katamrita nidaratim Eterupadrito nityam Jivaloka svabhavajai Nakaroti haranunam Katamrita nidaratim. Okay, word for word. Etai. By these. Upadrita. Disturbed. Nityam. Always. Jivaloka. The conditioned soul in the material world. Swabhavajai. Natural. Nakaroti. Does not do. Are. Of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nunam. Certainly. Kata. Of the words. Amrita. Of nectar. Nidhao. In the ocean. Pratim. Attachment. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Because the conditioned soul is always disturbed by bodily necessities such as hunger and thirst, he has very little time to cultivate attachment to hearing the nectarian words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Please repeat. Because the conditioned soul is always disturbed by the bodily necessities such as hunger and thirst, he has very little time to cultivate attachment to hearing the nectarian words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Unless one is associated with devotees, he cannot cultivate Krishna consciousness. Nirjana bhajana, cultivating Krishna consciousness in a solitary place, is not possible for the neophyte, for he will be disturbed by the bodily necessities, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Being so disturbed, one cannot cultivate Krishna consciousness. We therefore see that devotees known as Sahajya, who make everything very easy, do not associate with advanced devotees. Such persons, in the name of devotional activities, are addicted to all kinds of sinful acts: illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, and meat eating. There are many so-called devotees passing themselves off as devotees while engaging in sinful activities. In other words, one who is influenced by sinful activity cannot be accepted as a person in Krishna consciousness. A person addicted to sinful life cannot develop Krishna consciousness, as indicated in this verse. Om Jnana Timrandasa Vijnanandjana Shalakaya Chakshara Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamaya Parati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajata Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Savadetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakambhatamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagapte Gopesha Gopeka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Dapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namaste Jivananda Dasana Charni Prabhupada Vallabhai Sindhu Siddhavani Kyama Pratama Skadivati Dhatman Gandri Dhanjana Chakshishana. All right. So this verse is pointing out just how the material body can get in the way of our ultimate goal of life, which is to develop love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead and serve Him. And so what is the number one thing that people say when we're trying to approach them about spiritual life? Kirtaneshwar Garamasa.
I don't have time.
Yeah, no time, right? It's like the number one thing that people say when we're trying to tell them about spiritual life. I don't have time. I'm so busy, right? Because they're so busy attending to the needs and the wants of their body and their mind, right? And so therefore they cannot cultivate this attachment to hearing the nectarian words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as it says in this verse. And so that's really unfortunate, right? Because actually everybody does have time, right? You can listen to the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead when you're driving to school or work, right? You could, instead of watching so many, I don't even know what's popular now, but like back when I watched TV, like Game of Thrones, everybody had time to watch that, right? But nobody had time to hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so how do we cultivate that attachment, right? That's the big question. How can I cultivate this attachment? It's quite simple, by hearing and association, right? And the two kind of go hand in hand. It's in one way. Did you ever hear that saying? I think, fake it till you make it, right? So okay, so I'm not attached right now to hearing the nectarian words. Well, how do I do that? Well, I start doing the actions of the people that are attached, right? By listening and associating with the other devotees. And so we can't develop that attachment without first hearing. And this is why association is so powerful. We could see examples of this with the life of Narada Muni, right? Because he had gotten cursed at one point to be born as a Shudra, so a kind of lower class person. So Narada Muni, I don't know if you know, but he's like kind of one of the most amazing personalities. He's kind of like a transcendental spaceman, right? He's able to travel all around and sing the glories of Krishna and help people get closer to Krishna in some way. And in a lot of ways, he kind of instigates a lot of things, but it's always with the goal of getting people closer to Krishna. And so I remember when I first heard about Narada Muni, I thought, wow, that is a really cool job. You know, he gets to just travel around, talk about Krishna. You know, I mean, he's like the rock star of the Bhagavatam, basically. You know, what did you say? Huh? That's your job? That's all of our jobs. Yeah, that's all of our jobs. But he's got the ability to travel all over the universe, and I believe in multiple universes. So anyway, but first he was a Gandharva, and so he had offended some devotees because he was leading a kirtan that was glorifying someone other than the personality of Godhead. And so that's when they cursed him to become a Shudra. And so he was born the son of a maidservant, and his mother did work for the sages. She would take care of them and during the rainy season. And so naturally her son kind of helped out with that. And so he was able to associate with those great sages just for that short period of time. And he would listen to their conversations. And because of that association, he started to develop attachment for hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and attachment for the Lord's devotees as well. And so that was just from serving them. And also they allowed him to take some of the remnants, the leftover food that they didn't eat. So he was able to develop that attachment by that association. On the other hand, we have Maharaj Bharat, right? He was a great king who gave up everything to go to the forest to meditate. And, he was a very great sage. And so he's in the forest, but the problem was he was alone in the forest. He didn't have association. And I'm sure you've all heard this story, but he ended up becoming distracted from his spiritual duties by a baby deer that he had to save. His mother, the deer's mother, she was pregnant with the deer, and she got scared by like a tiger or some kind of big cat. And she goes to jump like over the river, over the stream, and she spontaneously kind of gave birth at that time, and the baby was just floating in the water, and it's a newborn little baby deer. And so, of course, Maharaj Bharat saw that and was like, oh no, let me help him. And so he saved the deer, and then he couldn't find the mother. I don't recall if the mother passed away or not. I don't remember. I think he just couldn't find her. Maybe she died. I don't know. So the little baby deer is all alone, and Maharaj Bhatt started taking care of the deer. And before you know it, he started spending more and more time thinking about that deer, and making sure the deer is fed, and just taking care of the deer, which is pretty natural for a lot of people, right? You see a little helpless baby, you want to help it. And so when one point he lost the deer had wandered off, and so he started to look for the deer, and he's just completely focused on finding this deer, kind of neglecting his meditation. And he slipped and fell, and he died. And because he is thinking of that deer, he was born as a deer again, right? And so that's the opposite, right? His problem, what caused that to happen, was he didn't have association, right? He didn't have any devotees there to remind him, hey, the deer's very nice, we can take care of him, but let's not neglect our meditations. Let's glorify the Lord together. And so in those two stories, we can see the importance of association. So I have some really nice various quotations about association and just how important it is. So there's actually, there's so many faults in Kali Yuga, right? I mean, all you have to do is just step outside the temple grounds and we can see so much misery, right? So many people exploiting one another, so many people just completely lost, living ghostly lives, so many greedy people, so much pollution, right? I mean, there's just an ocean of faults. But there's actually so many souls that want to be born in this age, even though there are so many faults. And why is that? Does anybody have a guess? None? Anyone? Why someone would want to be born now instead of in the golden age in Satya Yuga, right, where everything's peaceful and huh? Well, yeah, I mean that could certainly be part of why we keep coming back, because we wanted to gratify our senses. But there's actually a good reason why people want to be born here, and that's because of association. Okay, so here I'll read this. This is from the 11th canto. It says, "My dear king, the inhabitants of Satya Yuga, which is the golden age, and other ages eagerly desire to take birth in this age of Kali, since in this age there will be many devotees of the Supreme Lord Narayana. These devotees will appear in various places, but will be especially numerous in South India. O Master of Men, in the age of Kali, those persons who drink the waters of the holy rivers will almost all be pure-hearted devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva." And this is a little bit from the purport. "The inhabitants of Satya Yuga are certainly aware of the conditions of Kali Yuga, so they know it's pretty miserable here, right? There's so many wars, people are just horrible to one another, we're horrible to the planet, everything, it's just, yeah. So they know that in Kali Yuga, the difficult material situation forces the living entity to take complete shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the inhabitants of Kali Yuga therefore develop a high degree of love of Godhead. Therefore, although the inhabitants of Satya Yuga are far more sinless, truthful, and self-controlled than the people of other ages, they desire to take birth in Kali Yuga in order to taste pure love of Krishna. Without associating with the devotees of the Lord, no one can become an advanced devotee of the Lord. Therefore, since in Kali Yuga, other Vedic processes collapse due to the unfavorable condition. So if we remember, some of the other processes were kind of what Maharaj Bhatt was doing, right? Going off to the forest alone to meditate, right? That's just really not possible for us, right? There's so many distractions, the least of which is our minds, right? They're always disturbed. Since in Kali Yuga, other Vedic processes collapse due to the unfavorable condition, and since the only authorized Vedic process is the devotional chanting of the Lord's holy name, which is available to everyone. There will undoubtedly be innumerable Vaishnavas, or devotees of the Lord in this age. Birth in this age is very favorable for one who is eager to associate with the devotees. In fact, the Krishna consciousness movement is establishing authorized Vaishnava temples throughout the world, so that in innumerable areas one may avail himself with pure Vaishnavas. Association with the devotees of the Lord is far more valuable than any amount of association with persons who are merely self-controlled, sinless, or expert in Vedic scholarship. Therefore, it is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, O great sage, among many millions who are liberated and perfect in knowledge of liberation, one may be such a devotee of Lord Narayana or Krishna. Such devotees who are fully peaceful are extremely rare. Similarly, it is stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the verdict of all revealed scriptures is that by even a moment's association with a pure devotee, one can attain all success. So that's pretty amazing how important this association is, that people are willing to come, souls, Jiva souls are willing to come to this degraded age just so they can get that association, right? So they don't have to be in the forest and meditating alone. They can have this nice association, which we kind of take for granted, right? And the ability to, I like to always say it's like, spiritual progress is like on sale in Kali Yuga, right? We should have to chant the holy name, right? And associate with each other, right? Eat prasadam. I mean, those are not very difficult things, right? I mean, we can make them difficult for sure. And so actually we are very fortunate. Despite everything that's going on in this material world, all the chaos and the hurt and the pain and the misery, we're very fortunate. So in the fourth canto of the Bhagavatam, the Srimad Bhagavatam, it says, even a moment's association with a pure devotee cannot be compared to being transferred to heavenly planets, or even merging into the Brahman effulgence, that's what people want to do, right? When they want to merge into God, right? They want to merge into the light. That's merging into the Brahman effulgence in complete liberation. So a moment's association with a pure devotee cannot be compared to those things. Being in the heavenly planets, I mean, where the sense gratification is so amazing, we can't even imagine it, right? Like, I literally can't imagine it, because for me, like, some good sense gratification would be like, oh, I have a nice comfy mattress and, maybe some good sweets or something, whatever. But no, so much grander than that. I don't think very big. For living entities who are destined to give up the body and die, association with pure devotees is the highest benediction. Yeah. The topmost benediction for those who are living in this material world and are subjected to the repetition of birth and death is association with pure devotees. One should search out such pure devotees and remain with them. That will make one completely happy, even though living in the material world. So, I mean, isn't that what most people want, right? Is to be happy. I think most people would settle for just being happy, like half the time or even a third of the time, right? But no, the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada is telling us that this will make us completely happy, even while we're living here in the material world. Okay, so we know that, I'm sure you've seen this, people will do anything or put up with anything to be in the in crowd, right? I remember growing up and there was some kids in school, they were the cool kids, and I was like, oh, I would like to be a cool kid. And so there was these girls, I remember going to hang out with them, and they were going to the stores and they were like shoplifting, right? They were shoplifting. This is a really common thing that teenage girls do. Huh? That's what the cool kids do, right? Yeah. Well, the thing is I was not a cool kid either, okay? And so like I'm like totally petrified. I'm scared. I know it's wrong. I don't want to do it, you know, because it's wrong. And what's the point, you know? Like I don't need whatever they're stealing. What is it, like a lipstick or a nail polish or something? But this is what those girls were doing. And, you know, I seriously considered it because I wanted to be part of that crowd. But ultimately, like I'm a big nerd. And so I didn't actually do it. And then they made fun of me, right? And that was crushing to me. Now as an adult, I'm like, well, thank goodness, you know, like I didn't really want to be part of that group. But it looks really nice on the outside. I want to be one of the cool kids, you know? And so this is like a really common thing we see. You know, what do they say? I hear this a lot, you know, oh, you know, she got in with a bad crowd, right? The influence of that crowd, you know, caused her to get, you know, what, involved in intoxication or involved in, you know, shoplifting or whatever it is. I used to hear that a lot. Oh, my mom would say, don't hang out with that kid. They're running with a bad crowd, right? And that's because association is so powerful, right? We become like those who we hang out with, right? That saying, you know, show me who your friends are, I'll show you who you are, right? So even in spiritual life, though, we see that sometimes people will, you know, because in material life, people do this too, right? They put up a false front because they want to be part of that crowd. Well, this can happen in spiritual life too. Sometimes people will put up a false front of renunciation, right? And called false renunciation. So they'll shun even association, right? They'll shun, you know, all the comforts. They'll, you know, pretend basically to be more advanced than they are. And then ultimately, this is unsustainable. This is not a sustainable practice because they've not actually become renounced in the heart, right? And so what ends up happening, like Srila Prabhupada was talking about, we see them involved in, you know, sex and drugs and meat eating and gambling. We see them involved in these things, but at the same time trying to maintain this facade of renunciation. And Srila Prabhupada says, one who is influenced by sinful activity cannot be accepted as Krishna conscious. He says that in his purport. And so this is why Srila Prabhupada recommends what we call the four regulative principles, or sometimes they're called the four regulative principles of freedom. And so that can be confusing to some, like people are like, well, how can you say that's freedom? You can't do this, you can't do that, can't do this, right? But when we actually stop doing these things, that's, you know, meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, intoxication, that's when we become acutely aware of the binding nature of these things, right? Especially like, you know, if you're trying really hard to stop these, all of a sudden your mind's like preoccupied, right? But when you actually peacefully take up these, you can become even more aware of the binding nature of them, and you can see this, you know, how it controls your actions and the actions of others when you're involved in these things. And so it's not that stopping these things are going to make you Krishna conscious, right? I see people arguing that a lot. Oh, well, you think just because you're not doing these things, well, then you're Krishna conscious, you know. And a lot of times people are arguing this because they've not yet mastered the ability to stop those things. But really, it's only through the mercy of Krishna that we're able to do anything. And so it's not that stopping these things will make us Krishna conscious. That's not what we're saying at all, because there's many people that don't do those things and are not Krishna conscious at all, right? I mean, there's many people that don't do any of those things just for their own personal fitness, right? And it's all about their ego, right? Or their body. But what this does is it simply clears the path for a greater understanding of Krishna, right? It makes us more right to accept Krishna consciousness and to understand it. Now, on the other hand, it also doesn't necessarily mean that someone can't be Krishna conscious if they're doing these things, but it is exceedingly rare. I mean, very, very rare. Very, very unlikely. We have, examples of like the Pandavas gambling, and we have examples of Lord Balaram drinking the Varuni beverage, and that's one of my favorite stories. Actually, it's quite funny. And we have examples of, yeah, Garuda eating meat, exactly. We have examples of Kshatriyas that may or may not be Krishna conscious, but we do have examples of like Kshatriyas in general, that they're allowed to hunt and eat meat, right? Not like as a regular thing, but, and also they're not supposed to turn down a lady who requests a baby from them. So, right? But most of us are not living in any of those situations. I don't think. Is Garuda in here? I don't see him.
Garuda is always situated at the door of the temple. We don't have him when he's there.
Okay, so he's there, but he's not me, and I don't think he's one of you guys. And so yeah, it is very unlikely. Because the reason is because if you're truly Krishna conscious, you're not going to act on those desires to break those regulations. Now, notice I didn't say you're not going to have those desires, right? Because it's possible that you may still have those desires, and probably likely, right? Although it will become less over time. But what ends up happening is you have something that's better than the satisfaction that you get out of that temporary enjoyment for breaking one of the regs, and you actually don't want to do it, right? And so that's what's mind-boggling, and I think people sometimes don't understand when they come. If they find out about that, but they have really no experience yet of Krishna consciousness, they're like, well, I don't want to do that because I like to, have illicit sex and eat meat and gamble and take intoxication. Well, yeah, of course. But the reason that someone is able to stop doing those things is because we found something better. It feels better than that, and we actually don't want to do those things. So, like I've heard it said that, like intoxication, right? At some point when someone's taking intoxication, their consciousness is so low that the intoxication actually raises their consciousness just a little bit, makes them feel better, right? But ultimately it ends up kind of overall lowering that consciousness. But once you've taken to attempting to practice Krishna consciousness, your consciousness gets purified and raised up a little bit. And so then that thought of taking that intoxication, well, no, I don't want to take that because actually that would lower my consciousness. It would make me feel worse, right? And so you don't want to do these things. So now some people, they may delude themselves into thinking, oh, I'm so advanced. I don't need to follow these. Like Lord Balaram, he's drinking Varuni beverage and yelling at the moon, right? I don't have to, follow, he wasn't following. I'm very advanced. But actually, if you're capable of being honest with yourself, which, some people don't seem capable of this, but if you really try and you're capable of being honest with yourself, you're going to realize that this is Maya. That it's just a trick. And, otherwise, you're like Srila Prabhupada said, Sahaja. You're pretending to be, more advanced than you are, right? Okay, so this is what Srila Prabhupada says about the four regs. He wrote this in a letter to one of his disciples in 1974. He said, so far we are concerned, we are trying to train first-class men. How much great responsibility we have to follow the regulative principles. Chant the beads, live with personal character. That's really important. Live with personal character. Some people do all the other things and they forget that point right there, right? Regulative principles means to especially execute devotional service in terms of the revealed scripture under the direction of the spiritual master. By fulfilling the regulative principles, you come to the platform of spontaneous love for Krishna. Spontaneous love for Krishna is there already. It's already in there. It's our natural state of being. Spontaneous love for Krishna is there already, but is covered over by the influence of Maya. The regulative principles are a device to overcome the influence of Maya and come to the platform of spontaneous love of Krishna. If we want to exist as a first-class men in society, all of our students must be induced to follow the regulative principles. One shouldn't think artificially that he has come to the spontaneous platform. That is sahajism. So that spontaneous love is already within us, right? And so these regulative principles are just tools to help free that, basically, because it's just covered over, it's chained up by all these binding things that we do. We know each regular principle actually cultivates a specific quality that is really important. So no intoxication. Who knows what quality that brings? One of you? Huh? Sure, yeah, all of these. But do you know the specific, why can't I say specific too? Yeah, austerity. Good. All right. How about gambling? No gambling. Truthfulness, yeah. No illicit sex. Yeah, cleanliness. And no meat eating. Compassion, yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So let's take no intoxication, austerity. So some people think this is, like Maharaj Bharat. I'm going to go off to the forest all alone. I'm just going to meditate. I'm going to eat roots. I'm going to eat berries, and that's it. Drink stream water and dew from the leaves or whatever. But actually, that's not true austerity. Because true austerity is using everything that we have in the service of Krishna. So if that's what you're doing, if that's how you're doing your austerity, truly reflect, is this the best thing I can be doing for the service of Krishna, right? Then there's no gambling, truthfulness, right? Honesty. So this means being honest with ourselves too, right? And also others. Being honest in our dealings, right? It doesn't mean like, oh, yes, I'm just not gonna gamble, right? No, you're not gambling, but you're out there cheating people, it's not, you're not following, right? These are things that develop a good character in us, right? If I'm not gambling, which, for me, I think I've gambled maybe once or twice. It wasn't really a thing for me. But if I'm, lying to Chris, when Chris says, oh, did you take my shoes? And I say, oh, no, I didn't take them. Meanwhile, I'm running around in his shoes, No, I'm not following the regs. Okay, so no illicit sex. That cultivates cleanliness, right? So this means, physical cleanliness, but also mentally, being clean mentally also. And being clean in our dealings also, don't say, okay, I'm having no sex, but still I'm objectifying the people around me, right? You're not following, right? Because it's not a list of like no's, these are tools that we're using to cultivate these characteristics because they're important. And then no meat eating, that's compassion, right? So of course, yeah, we have compassion for the animals. We're not going to kill them and eat them. But sometimes people forget that this means to be compassionate to other human beings too, right? And sometimes we'll see in the devotee community, people forget to be compassionate to other devotees, right? Maybe you're thinking like, oh, you know, I'm doing so much and they're not doing very much. And you're feeling not compassionate towards that person. That's the wrong state of mind. Or maybe you're, you know, compassionate to the devotees, you're compassionate to the animals, but then, you know, you see people out there in Maya and you think, oh, they're just in Maya, you know, what a bunch of losers, you know. No, you need to be compassionate to these people, to everybody, not just the animals. And also compassionate to the earth, right? I mean, that's a big problem right now, climate change, right? Because no one's being compassionate to the earth, right? We've just been taking all her resources and not being compassionate to the earth, right? So the main thing is that the four regs also help us realize that we're not our bodies, we're not our minds, right? Because our mind is going to tell us, oh yes, wouldn't it be nice if I was intimate with that person, or wouldn't it be nice if I took some intoxication, or wouldn't it be nice if I ate that, you know, piece of meat, or whatever it is, or thinking about, oh yes, I can win so much money, you know. But following these help us realize that we're not our bodies and we're not our minds, that we don't need to be controlled by these things. And I know I said this, I think, the last class you guys came through, but it bears repeating. Like so many people, when they first come, they think of all the things they can't do, right? And this is the wrong perspective, because you shouldn't force yourself to do any of these things because it's unsustainable. And then you kind of get in the realm of sahajism, right? If you're just pretending you're more advanced. So we want to focus on just becoming attached to Krishna, and these things will happen naturally. Like I said earlier, you'll do these things because you want to do them, right? Because you actually want to. And that's because attachment to Krishna is the same as detachment from the material world. And you know, you might still, like I said, have, you know, a little bit of desire for these things, but it becomes easy to detach from them because you actually have something better, and you're doing this because you want to. And then you can try a little hard to completely follow these. And it's out of a desire to get closer to Krishna, not out of pride, right? Some people follow these things out of pride, or the desire for fame, adoration, and distinction, right? But no, you'll do them out of love and out of a desire to get closer to Krishna, because you have that higher taste. It's just something that can be easily lost when people first come. And so that's why sometimes we don't really tell people right away. You know, even Srila Prabhupada himself, right? He didn't tell his disciples about the four regs, his first initiated disciples, until after they were initiated. If you look, there's a copy of the letter he wrote to them. If you go in the hallway that's in between the small kitchen and the big kitchen, right when you walk in the door on the left-hand side, there's a copy of the letter that he wrote to tell them. And I always thought, wow, that's something else. You know, oh, by the way, yeah, you should follow these four things, which are like the cornerstones of American life, right? You know. And so, yeah, and Srila Prabhupada did that because he knew if he led with that, people would run away, right? They would say, no, especially Westerners, right? But he allowed them to develop some attachment to Krishna, an attachment to the devotees first. And that helped it make it easier for these devotees to follow those regulative principles because they wanted to do it, right? Because they wanted to develop a closer relationship with Krishna and to please their spiritual master. So I think people get really hung up on this sometimes. And if you just follow what Srila Prabhupada says, just add Krishna to your life in some way. I mean, you can't go wrong. So, and then also the other thing I always like to say in classes, you want to accept what's favorable for your Krishna consciousness and reject what's unfavorable. But you have to be honest with yourself, right? You can't say, oh, it's really favorable if I have a brand new Cadillac for my Krishna consciousness, then I can really focus on Krishna. No, you're deluding yourself. You want that brand new Cadillac. Oh, it'd be really favorable for my Krishna consciousness if I was, like a famous rock star. Let me start focusing on that. Then I could reach so many people. Well, yes, that's true. You could reach so many people doing that, but is that why you're doing it, or are you doing that because you want to be a famous rock star, right? And usually people want to be a famous rock star. Why? Because they can get the girls, they can get the intoxication, they can get the money, they can get all these things, right? Comes easy. What is that? That old song, get your money for nothing and your chicks for free, right? Yeah. So, all right. I think we'll end there. If anybody has any comments or questions, yes, Kirtaneshwara Garanga Das.
Yeah, I like this points you're making, but there's a nice purport that I read many times, but just kind of struck me as kind of a powerful purport. And this is from the Bhagavad Gita, a 3rd chapter, 337, which Krishna says, it is lust only, which is, the all-devouring sinful enemy of mankind. And that's why we're forced to do things we don't want to do so much of the time. I know it's kind of wrong, but I'm going to do it anyways. Lust only. And Prabhupada says, therefore lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity. And it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. Wrath is the manifestation of the mode of ignorance. These modes exhibit themselves as wrath and other corollaries. If, therefore, the mode of passion, instead of being degraded into the mode of ignorance, is elevated to the mode of goodness by the prescribed method of living. If, therefore, the mode of passion, instead of being degraded into the mode of ignorance, is elevated by the mode of goodness by the prescribed method of living and acting, then one can be saved from degradation of wrath by spiritual attachment. And so Prabhupada's saying that if we engage in the process of mode of goodness living, rising early, chanting, eating, taking the proper prasadam and so forth, and, doing service sincerely, we come to the mode of goodness and we become attached to the activities of Krishna consciousness, and then we don't fall into lust. Very nice.
It's like a prescription, right? Prabhupada's a doctor. He gave us a prescription. And the medicine will work if we follow it. Yeah, Pavitra Mati.
Can I tell a quick funny story?
Please.
I know Vera doesn't like me to tell too many stories. It's a real quick one, though. Years ago, back in the early 80s, late 70s, we used to, a team of us would go with two spotters, 2 men would drive, take us to Las Vegas. And I've never in my life gambled. I hate gambling. I've never gambled in my life. And we would do the big casinos, Caesar's Palace, MGM. I don't know what they have now. They got a lot more. But we would go inside the casinos. We would do the slot machines, the crap tables and everything. And we had little juggernaut stickers, and we would put them on people, and they'd get superstitious, and they'd put them on the slot machine. So all the slot machines would have juggernaut stickers on. We'd work from about 9 o'clock at night till about 4 in the morning. And so we would separate, so we wouldn't know where any of us were. There'd be about maybe 10 of us or 7 of us, Then we'd have 2 spotters, and we wouldn't know where the spotters were. So we go from casino to casino. Sometimes we would take a taxi down the strip and back up again. So it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I was in one casino. It was kind of not a big one. It was a smaller one. And there was a nickel machine, And I was standing there thinking, geez, there's nobody around, Maybe if put a nickel in the machine, so, you never know. So I put this, I hadn't seen any devotee in hours. So I put this nickel in the machine, and all of a sudden I hear, his name was, I can't remember his name. He's passed away. This Prabhupada disciple, I hear, Pavitra. It was like a name coming from the sky. And I almost left my body. I'll never forget it.
Thought you were gonna get away with it, huh?
Yeah, I thought I was gonna get away with it. And I pulled it, nothing came out, of course, I'll never forget it. It was like, what was his name? Shuddha Shrava. And he was from Queens in New York. So you can imagine the personality he had, And it was really, if you can imagine the scenario, was like, and I hadn't seen Shuddha Shrava for like hours and hours and hours and hours. I had no idea it was like right behind me,
Yeah,
Put this nickel in the, anyway, it was pretty funny.
that's funny.
Yeah.
There was a show that came out like right before I moved in the temple. It was called Rami, and it's about a young Muslim kid, American kid, and he was like trying to, make some spiritual progress, and he was diving really deep into his Muslim practice, and so his friends, they also basically follow most of the four regs, and his friends, for some reason, they're all like at a casino, and so they know they can't, but his one friend, I guess, has a knack for like predicting which machines were gonna hit, and so he was just like walking past one, and he like so badly wanted to stick that coin in there and do it, but he couldn't, it was against their regulations, and so he told the guy that was there, he was like, here, put your coin in that machine, and the guy did, and he won so much money, and he was just like, the guy that won was very excited, but the Muslim guy was just like, oh,
We used to work with the people. We put our arms around and say, big money, and they'd get excited, and if money came out, they would just take a handful and give it to us, That's how we let them work for us.
Yeah. All right, I think we'll end here. All right, Bhakti Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Would it be done?